What's it on YouTube? Welcome back everyone, this is Lee, and yes, today's the day we'll be talking about the Nikon 135mm f2D lens. So without further ado, let's begin. So the Nikon 135mm f2D lens, this lens costs roughly $1,400 USD as of today, and also it's still being produced as of today, so that is pretty cool to know. And also this lens has 7 elements, 9 blades, it uses a 72mm filter thread, and also it weighs about 815 grams. Now, this lens is for the F mount system, but for those people in the Z mount system, you can still activate the autofocus by buying Mega Dab, so that is pretty cool. And yes, eye tracking does work. Now, let's take a look at some features of this lens, because this lens has a lot of features, and let's start with the aperturing. Now, the aperturing is very clicky, of course, and also don't forget when you use this lens, make sure the aperturing is on the F16, because if it's not on the F16, it's going to have an error marker, right? And also, by the aperturing, it has a hold switch, which will definitely hold things in place so you don't accidentally change your aperture, which is, it's a feature, but I don't use that feature, but it's a feature though. And then next to the hold switch, you get the manual and automatic switch, which is kind of common, of course. And also above that, you get the defocus image control, which will allow you to have that dreamy look in your photos. We'll get into some samples after this, of course. And also definitely the lens hood. It's a pull-out lens hood, and it's made out of metal, which is very nice. I actually kind of miss this type of build, you know. This is the type of lens quality that you don't see in today's contemporary lenses, so this is a very nice touch actually, so I really appreciate that. But if you take a look at the back of the lens, you will notice that it does not have weather seal. There's no rubber gasket at all, so just keep all that in perspective. Now, let's take a look at some image quality. All right, so here is f2 versus 2.8. Let's zoom in. Keep in mind, we have a high contrast background, which will show off the chromatic aberration, the CA. And yeah, definitely CA is all around this lens at f2 and 2.8, it seems right here. And also I want to note that I always felt that f2 is slightly a tad softer than 2.8. Let's take a look at the bokeh. The bokeh balls, there you go. And let's take a look at the outfit. Definitely the edges at 2.8 is more focused than f2. There you go. All right, let's take a look at 2.8 versus f4. Here's 2.8 versus f4. Check out the background, the blur. Let's zoom in. Right off the bat, you will notice that the chromatic aberration seems to slowly die off around f4. And look at the bokeh balls. The bokeh balls is getting smaller around f4. So let's take a look at the edges. There we go. And yeah, you get more focus obviously around f4. And the bokeh balls is shrinking. So let's take a look at 5.6 versus f4 to get an idea. Here's 5.6 versus f4. And around 5.6 is where the chromatic aberration seems to all die out. So there you go. And definitely the bokeh balls gets a lot smaller as you turn up the aperture. There we go. All right, so here's 5.6 versus f8. And yeah, everything seems to be completely gone in terms of chromatic aberration. f8 is the way to go if you don't want chromatic aberration at all. And the bokeh balls has shrank. Look at that. Let's take a look at the bottom. Everything's in focus around f8. There you go. Here's f8 versus f11. And right off the bat, yeah, it looks more or less the same in a way. Let's take a look. There's nothing too dramatic. Definitely the hoodie looks clean now. There's no chromatic aberration. And the bokeh balls in the backs are getting smaller. So there you go. All right. Here's F16 and F11. There you go. There you go. Let me know what you guys think. I would say that, yeah, this lens is pretty good when you go beyond 5.6. That is for sure. If you want to get rid of the chromatic aberration. I want to show you guys a high contrast background right before we continue the side-by-side comparison. So let's do F2 versus F2 with a high contrast background right there. And if you take a look at the rim of my hat, you could get that purple right there. So if you're using this lens, make sure you're not shooting in a high contrast background, or else you'll suffer this chromatic aberration. Yeah, that normally goes away around 5.6, but with something in the background, you could hide most of it. So there you go. All right, I want to show you guys just the background blur that you'll get at F2 versus 2.8. Here's a background blur right there. Right there. Let's do F4 versus 2.8. Right there, right there. Here is F4 versus 5.6. And also keep in mind, the bokeh balls get smaller when you raise up the aperture, obviously. So there you go. Boom, boom. F11, F8. And there you go. All right. And as for the defocus image control, I'm going to work from front to rear, rear to front to show you guys each sample that this lens has to offer. And basically what this does is it will create that dreamy look in your image. And so if you're like a baby shooter and all you do is shoot babies, this will be the lens for you. Actually, a lot of people use this function for that reason. So this is probably why this lens is still being produced right now, is because a lot of photographers are looking for this type of like dimension in their lens, and definitely this 135 f2 lens will give you that. So there you go. And just a quick reminder, if you're shooting landscape with this, make sure that you're not shooting wide open, because if you're shooting wide open at f2, you will get that chromatic aberration. The best to do is shoot around like 5.6. Let me show you guys 5.6 right over here. And 5.6 will kind of remove all the chromatic aberration. As you can imagine, look at that. It's all gone. So that is something for you guys to know. And also, this lens will definitely flare up on you. So let me show you guys a flare. As you can see, the flare is right over there. And yeah, there we go. So just wrap things up, the Nikon 135 f2D lens. This lens is one of those lenses on the Nikon lineup that's very special. Actually, it's very special to me. I've been using this for the last 6 years. This is one of my go-to lenses if I want that, you know, portrait shot, right? The money shot, right? But I will have to say one thing about this lens. That's a con about this lens. And I know a lot of people that are using this lens professionally, they could vouch for this as well. When using this lens, you need your subject to be further away, right? So if you're further away and your environment is kind of noisy, you need to raise your voice to command your model to move around. So that is what I noticed whenever I use this 135 f2D lens. So that is something for people to know. But other than that, if you're in the baby photography realm of things, having that defocus image control, that is the money maker right there. That is the money maker right there. You should definitely look at some photos out there with this lens. You'll see, you will see. But anyways, thank you guys for checking me back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. Definitely click like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, take it easy. Peace.